In the spirit of movie week, I decided to make my own video for my blog about this week's readings. So in this video, the readings I will be discussing are Responsible Archaeology, Action Archaeology in the Modern World, and Archaeology in the Pages of National Geographic. So let's begin with Responsible Archaeology. Whenever I read this article, before reading it, I definitely thought that there was a clear distinction between the good guys, the archaeologists, and the bad guys, the raiders and looters and such. But in this article, I came to realize that they are very similar, actually. Yeah, as the author states right from the beginning, the collection of artifacts is actually extremely close to the looters, and for generations they've actually been working hand in hand because it's a very common way for archaeologists to collect artifacts, especially valuable ones. And speaking of valuable ones, there's this one quote in here I really like. It says, he's discussing that if animal rights activists can change the perception of fur coats from a symbol of wealth and prestige to an admission of cruel insensitivity, then surely we can teach the public that artifact collecting is less an indication of cosmopolitan sophistication than a manifestation of selfishness and greed. I think the authors put this quote in there to reiterate the point that a lot of the time whenever people see archaeologists collecting things, they believe that it is for, that they just want to acquire all of this wealth, and they compare them in their minds to actually the looters, especially people in lands or countries or sites wherever people are doing diggings. They think that they're not even asking them. They're being very irresponsible. They're just going and taking things, whatever they want. So, but the author, they want to change that. And actually, later in the article, they give examples of how they're working to change this fact. For example, the one author, Pyburn, they say that whenever she was doing an archaeological dig in Belize, she actually she really opened her project up to community involvement, which obviously she shows as a success story because she says that not only were the people interested in what she was doing, but nothing was stolen during the entire 3 months that she worked. So I think that's a success, and throughout their own examples just like this, they show that responsible archaeology works. You don't have to be sneaky, you can be responsible, be respectful of other countries, you can show that archaeology isn't just for selfish gain to dig up pretty objects from foreign lands, but it's actually educational, beneficial to the general public, beneficial to wherever your site is, and it overall can be a positive thing when done responsibly. Okay, so the next article, Action Archaeology in the Modern World, was very reminiscent of last week's sections of articles. In my personal opinion, even though our good writer does work at the University of Pennsylvania, this article was a little whiny. I mean, pretty much his whole point was that people don't understand archaeology and they don't get enough credit for what they do. Yeah. I don't know if that is necessarily true, because still throughout this class I'm not entirely sure I understand what archaeologists do. I feel like we just keep hearing what archaeologists do not do. But whatever. He also seems a little upset that the most popular archaeologist that people know is Indiana Jones, and that people clearly have the wrong impression of archaeologists, and people see it as pure entertainment. But he also says at the same time that it is encouraging that the younger generation of people thinks that archaeology is important. Now, I say that that's a bit contradictory, because the younger generation is typically the people that follow pop culture, such as movies like Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider that he mentioned. So where does he think that they're coming up with this importance of archaeology? I mean, I am an educated person. I'm not really sure what archaeologists do besides what I've seen in movies. So I don't really understand how he thinks that other people know more about what they do. Their base of importance in archaeologists, I'm not really sure what he believes it's based on. And that's pretty much all he talked about, how it was encouraging, and even though he doesn't believe that people give archaeologists enough credit, and so on and so forth, much like last week. Thank you. And the last video in this video blog for today is Archaeology in the Pages of National Geographic. This was definitely my favorite article this week, mainly because I am an avid reader of National Geographic, but I've never looked at it like this ever before. I never even thought about it. Mainly the authors are saying that National Geographic, well, this article, it is a little outdated, 1990 I see, but that National Geographic depicts scenes that don't reflect the true archaeology of our world, because they are based on, mainly, they're based on ideals such as beauty and riches, and they overemphasize adventurous exploration sites such as like lost cities and other populations of people that are extremely out of the ordinary. But even though this is a great examination of this of National Geographic, and it really picks it apart in I think a good way. However, there's this one part and it says, in talking about National Geographic, here's geography at the service of society, promoting America, democracy, and internationalism through exploration, expansionism, and imperialism. They are stating all these properties of National Geographic. However, I think that these in general are just characteristics of the United States. So this magazine, even though they are blatantly taking down the magazine, if they're really against these ideals, then they should in fact be taking down much of the United States, because the United States is the source of these ideals. The magazine is just a reflection of our society. A good reflection, as they're saying, even though I never really noticed. Oh gosh, I love this one part. After they were saying that the beauty and costliness of items is often displayed in this magazine because it's something that we value, but then shortly after that, it started talking about actual like human archaeology and anthropology, and okay, I'll just read it. Skeletons are given flesh and evaluated accordingly, as in the article on Herculaneum, where the caption beneath the artist's reconstruction reads, "Beauty is more than skin deep." In real life, she was about 35 years old, with a lovely face of rare proportions, perfect teeth, and a dainty nose. Again and again, present-day American values are extended into the past, onto the people of the past, appropriated by us to represent us in an earlier state. Fascinating. I read that like 5 times, and it's so true. People always do that. They base our ideals, like a dainty nose and good bone structure, onto people that lived thousands of years ago that didn't even necessarily follow that, but we're making it relevant to us, so that people assume that National Geographic and other archaeologists are actually finding out things about us personally, and making it more relatable, like they're actually tracing back our personal history. And at one point we were beautiful. Yeah, it's a good point. We do that all the time. Yeah. Again, back to what I was saying before, later on they say, the magazine gives disproportionate attention to cultural development of Western society and the origins of Judeo-Christian tradition. Once again, I could rewrite the sentence as, the United States gives disproportionate attention to the cultural development of Western civilizations and to the origins of Judeo-Christian tradition. Just saying, the magazine is a good reflection of America, and that's what they based it on. So I'm not necessarily sure that their bashing is against the right thing, but it's definitely a really interesting point. I love this article. So, that is the end of my video blog for this week. I have summarized ethics in archaeology, responsible archaeology. What is this called? Responsible archaeology is applied anthropology. Action archaeology in the modern world, and finally, archaeology in the pages of National Geographic. I hope that I'll be able to look back at this video in a couple weeks and remember all these articles, because that was a good review. Okay.